So we all know a word that has become more popular in the last decades, a word called denial. Denial. Used in the psychological context of people who avoid given situations, they deny, they minimize, they try to ignore. But when there's a problem, you just go into denial, which is considered a negative. But on the other hand, think about it, and you come to realize that actually it's very much part of a healthy immune system to have a certain measure of denial in certain cases. If a person, for example, has dealt with a shock, something traumatic, and really shook them up, and time passes, we know with time, memory fades, and some of that initial trauma becomes somewhat subdued. Would that be called denial? Would that be called avoiding? Or it's part of the healing process that we cannot be in the same state of complete being overwhelmed. It's part of life that we learn to buffer certain things. And the same thing with other experiences in life, not necessarily over time. That we have a certain measure of resilience that's able to contain even somewhat traumatic or difficult experiences. So, frankly, the human body is, of course, a brilliant system, has a brilliant immune system, and part of it is that when things happen, we have a certain element of being able to call it shock absorbers that allow us to get through difficult situations. And it's not necessarily what we would call the usual form of denial, but it is a measure of balance and moderation. So the fact is, anyone who's in the world of healing or therapy knows that when you're dealing with someone who's whatever it is that they're dealing with, a challenge, you don't always come with a full-out assault on their psyche that we have to put everything on the table, everything needs to be exposed, let's regress to a point and re-experience the initial shock or trauma that you experienced in the first place. That has to be done with measure, because there are times the body itself, your very resistance to certain recollections in your life actually is a healthy thing. So it should not overwhelm you. Where denial can become unhealthy is where you're really burying and avoiding situations that should be addressed. But finding the perfect balance is a critical point in all true growth. The balance between honesty and transparency, but also taking it step by step. And it's actually the wise counselor, the wise coach that will know how to keep that balance in place. Because one extreme or the other is usually not healthy. So let's talk more about this, because sensitivity would seem to be, are we too sensitive for our own good? You think, well, of course not. Sensitivity, empathy, it's a beautiful thing. If anything, we suffer the other extreme, insensitivity, where people are callous and they're less lacking empathy and lacking care. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at a human being's emotional health, emotions by definition are a very interesting entity. Let's analyze them a bit. I know it's a little almost counterintuitive to analyze emotions, because emotions are not really subject to intellectual analysis. That's their very definition, is that they're emotions. But yet, as we know, in a healthy person, you want your emotions to be checked and guided and somewhat directed by your mind. Think of the mind as being like the captain of the ship, and the experience is the ship itself, the emotions. So we know as young children, our emotions are As young children, our emotions are often very impulsive, and we don't have a mind yet developed enough to tame them or to direct and channel them. That's why we can have tantrums. That's why we can react impulsively, even in situations where we should be more calm or more balanced. As we grow older, our minds become, the reflective mind is, so to speak, the one that guides healthy emotions. Now, of course, a mind without emotions is just a computer. But emotions without a mind can also lead us astray. Very often, just think a practical example. Someone says something to you and they ticks you off, something insulting or something hurtful, and you immediately want to react, but your mind will tell you, why don't you wait a few minutes? And once you do, you realize, you know what, maybe I should consider more, maybe I have to think through, maybe my reaction was too impulsive, maybe I need to understand what the reasons were behind this. I mean, I have emails, a whole email, I have a whole, in my inbox, a whole folder of emails I've never sent. You know, those emails that you write immediately reacting to something, either someone really said something offensive or something that you really want to respond to. And I've trained myself to write the email so I get it out of my system, but don't send it so fast. And I wait. And once you wait, you come to say to yourself, you know what, unless I'm talking about an emergency, you wait overnight, you sleep on it, and you realize, you know, my response was very appropriate perhaps at the moment, but now that I think about it, it'd be more productive. Either I didn't write it, or I tone it down, or edit it. This is a perfect example where your emotions can get the best of you, and your mind is, so to speak, step back, reflect, deliberate on it, do a little more due diligence before you react. And the same is true in everything in life. You know, you have these brilliant marketing people who call you, and they want to sell you something, and they're excellent at manipulating your emotions. And then when you say, I want to think about it, they'll say the deal is only for the next half hour. After that, you'll lose the opportunity. You know, they find all the right words to trigger you to react. They want you to act immediately without thinking. That's what good marketing is. Now, I'm not saying all marketing is bad and manipulative, but a big part of it is to try to get your emotions to respond before you think about it too much. But then when you do reflect, you realize, this is not for me, or this was just it was a good sell, but it was not really a product that I really want. And sometimes worse than that. So you see clearly how the emotions and the mind are constantly, in a way, they're even at a battle with each other. How many times your emotions tell you, I want to do something. They tempt you. They seduce you. And then later you satisfy your temptation or your need or your desire. You realize it wasn't worth it. And then sometimes it's a neutral, innocuous situation. Sometimes it's not. So you have this all the time, that the emotions work by impulse, reflexive many times. And the mind is reflective. And you need to find the right balance. So if someone will say, I'm being sensitive. Yes, sensitive is a very beautiful thing. But the question is, are you acting in your sensitivity? I remember once giving a class, and someone had asked me a related question about where are obligations of being kindness and compassion? Is there such a thing as being overkind, too compassionate? The crime of compassion, as they call it. And the answer, interestingly, is when you think about it, initially you think, how could you ever go wrong with being kind? But let's analyze it. So I gave a scenario. You're walking down the street. We were in New York City at the time I was giving my class, and you see a homeless person down the street. So you have that compassion. You go over, you give them a coin, or you may help them in another way. Okay. There are times that you walk by and you get all upset at the person. What are you doing in the street, loitering, creating a reckless type of a reckless environment? Now, one day you're compassionate, the other day you get upset. In other words, is it all up to your mood? Like when you're in the good mood, then that compassion is right. And when you're not, compassion is non-compassion is the right way to go? Or is there something else, something more objective, an objective arbiter that determines what's right or wrong? So, for example, instead of throwing a coin to this person, why don't you invite him home for dinner? So many people say, well, I don't know who this person is, a stranger, they may be dangerous, or I don't need this type of person in my home. So suddenly you have a boundary with your compassion. So what determines compassion? Makes you feel good? Is that what it comes down to? So if you think about it, you see that it does require reflection. What would be the best way to help this person? Maybe give them a loan. Maybe get them a job. Maybe introduce them to someone that can help them. So we have all our limits. So as much as that compassion looks so beautiful and sensitivity, we're always regulating it in different ways. And I don't know if there's a black and white answer to this question. I think it's case by case. You have to look at the circumstances. So the idea of being sensitive, absolutely, we all understand the need to have empathy, to care, to be compassionate. However, the fact is that, yes, a person can be overly compassionate. And here would be the crime of compassion. The expression is, when you're compassionate to those that are cruel, you end up being cruel to those that are compassionate. Or the expression, I think, a fuller expression comes from the Hebrew. When you're compassionate to those that don't deserve compassion, you'll end up being not compassionate to those that deserve compassion, and vice versa. So you have to also keep balance and know the circumstances and try to do it in a way that's channeled. In the Kabbalistic context, we know there's a thing called chesed, which is kindness, and gvura, which is discipline. Think of it like the gas and the brakes. So we know to drive a car, you need to have gas, but you can't keep your foot on the pedal all the time. You also need brakes. And sometimes you need the balance to know how quickly to go, to know how to channel it. The same thing in communication. You may love someone deeply, but you could also suffocate them with love. Think of rain. Rain comes down as a flood, a deluge, will destroy the fields just like a drought. So rain coming down in drops that are channeled, that are monitored, the drops can be absorbed in the earth to the point that it will make things grow. So you see that even kindness needs to be channeled. And that is the real key to a real healthy life. The balance between sensitivity and the balance of channeling it in a proper and disciplined fashion. The balance between awareness and avoidance. Sometimes avoidance is a healthy thing to do. Obviously, case by case. Sometimes not everything has to be confronted. Overlooking things. In relationships, we say often, you want to be right or you want to be happy. Yeah, you can stand on principle, I want to be right, and get into an argument about it. Or sometimes it's worthwhile overlooking certain things. Like it didn't happen, transcending them. Obviously, there's situations we absolutely should not ignore and should not go into denial. But there are situations that it's healthy to step back, move on. And that's the key thing to keep in mind. That yes, sensitivity, if it's not balanced properly, can end up hurting us and hurting others as well. Now, this doesn't mean, again, this is not advocating any form of avoiding something that shouldn't be avoided, obviously. But it's an interesting way of looking at life and looking at yourself, looking at how we make decisions. Sometimes a decision can be made, you think it's motivated for all the best reasons. And then you start thinking about it, was it really the best for the circumstances? It's not always best what you think is right, but what's right for the situation? What's right for your child? What's right for your student? What's right for the person, the other person? Not just for what's right, what you feel should be done. That's correct. And sometimes it doesn't go according to the way our instincts may direct us. And we do need that deliberation. Or we may even need an objective opinion, because we can be biased and prejudiced and not always see things in an objective light. And be aware of that we have blind spots. And not like the guy that says, oh, yes, I have blind spots, but I know where they are. Part of blind spots is that you don't know where they are. There are things we know we don't know, but there are things we don't know we don't know. And that's also part of the humility necessary in relationships and in building something that is growthful and helpful, not just to yourself, but to others around you. So in that context, emotional overload, yes, emotions are critical in life, but they can also overload you. They could also overwhelm you. Look at today, look at technology. We're being inundated by things that are completely overloading our emotions, manipulating, trying to get our attention, not always for great reasons. And it's critical that you have gatekeepers. Gatekeepers, what are you watching with your eyes? What are you listening to with your ears? What are you smelling? What are you tasting? What are you touching? Gatekeepers that protect our senses, which are essentially the bridges between the world and interfaces between you and the world around you, to make sure that what enters in your life is what's proper, and what leaves from you is also proper. Not everything you think has to be said. Not everything you see has to be acknowledged. And this needs, again, that balance. So in the context of self-awareness and self-growth and personal growth and personal actualization, counterintuitively, at times, actually not being aware of something can be as powerful as being aware of something. And that's the decisions we make in our lives as we move along determining what's a priority, how to act on it, and acting in the most responsible fashion. So I hope these words are helpful, especially in today's day and age. There's so many things that trigger us, things in the media, the headlines, and there are those that are trying to provoke us all the time. Be careful what you're provoked by. Not everything deserves the same reaction. Sometimes someone has an intention to provoke you. They want you to act. They want you to feel a certain way. And you have to make the decision, is it the healthy thing? Is it the healthy, proper response? So we have many challenges in life, and we really want to be able to live our lives purposely, deliberately, not reacting to other people's reactions or other people's demands or other people's expectations. To have discretion, to make sure that when we make a decision and we react to something, it's done with the proper balance and the proper harmony in navigating the ups and downs and the twists and turns of life. So, may God bless each of us to find that type of harmony, just like a balanced heart is contraction, expansion, perfect wave, and balanced breath is exhaling and inhaling. The same thing with our emotions, a type of chesed and gvura, kindness and discipline balance of the gas and the brakes, of the drive of determination, which is powerful, and ambition, but also the humility and restraint, to know when to hold and when to fold, to know when to demand and when to yield. And that's the key to life, to being able to create that balance. And that's how we not only sustain ourselves, but we thrive. This has been Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com. We're here every Sunday, this program, every Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as other programs throughout the week. Please check it out at meaningfullife.com, a robust schedule of different type of programming. And if you enjoy this, please subscribe to these offerings, to our YouTube channel, share, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, feedback, comments. And now you can check out also MLC Global, where we're beginning to expand through AI, different languages, different repurposing these ideas, and trying to fill the world with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Thank you, and be well.